All right, we are a few minutes past. I'm going to start things off here. Thank you guys for all coming and attending live our webinar today on Cultivate, a deeper understanding of chemistry, biology, and physics through active learning. And before I forget, because people are asking me in the chat, where is Waldo or Wally, depending on your region? Top left here by the table. So there he is where my mouse is kind of hovering now. Okay, now on to business, of course. So welcome again. I thank you guys for attending live. A few things to mention before we start. Here is a table of contents. So I'll do a quick welcome, some housekeeping. I'll introduce our presenters for today. Then I'll pass things off to Brenda from Van-Griner, who'll speak about their experiences, followed by Christina of Digital Ed. Then we'll close things off with a little bit of Q&A at the end. We are targeting to be done roughly in about 45 to 50 minutes. So if you have to drop off early, we do send a recording of this webinar afterwards in the next 24 hours that you'll receive in your inboxes. With that in mind, just a reminder, if this is your first time attending a webinar through Zoom, if you have any questions for us as we're speaking, in your Zoom bar in the top, there is a Q&A window. There you can post your questions, and we will respond to them at the very end of the webinar, live on the actual webinar itself. Or if it's a technical question you're having or some other type of question, we will just respond to you directly in the Q&A window through the chat window. So again, this can be for us or for Brenda, whatever you prefer. Just put it through the Q&A window. So with that in mind, I do want to introduce who will be speaking today and who will be hearing from mostly. First is Brenda Schwieterman of Van-Griner Learning. A little bit about Brenda. She began her career at Van-Griner Learning about 10, 11 years ago in 2013 after she graduated from the University of Dayton with a degree in visual communications. She started there as a graphic designer, but then quickly moved into a project manager role where she oversaw hundreds of print projects annually. Currently, she's a senior digital project manager in charge of LabRight. This is Van-Griner's all-in-one digital lab solution, which we'll see today during the webinar. In this role, she oversees customer relations and product development. Now, when Brenda's not working, she is very busy still, raising 3 young children on a small farm in Ohio with her husband, Sam. So welcome, Brenda, today. I will now introduce ourselves here at Digital Ed. First, I'll talk about Christina Perdiculias. She's our president and COO, leveraging her experience in executive roles within the tech sector. She spearheads our strategic direction, executive leadership, and overall management. She has orchestrated a large number of successful product launches in her career, ranging from engineering simulation tools all the way through security SaaS solutions. So she currently holds 2 master's degrees, one in engineering and one in data analytics, and is also a licensed professional engineer, underscoring her commitment to driving innovation and excellence in the technology landscape. And on the left-hand side, yours truly, I'm Johnny Zivku. I've been in product marketing and management for the last 15 years in the ed tech sector. I have currently been marked by working at Digital Ed in various roles related to customer management, product marketing, digital marketing, and everything in between. I have a commitment that lies in bridging the gap between technology and education, and I love to ensure that students just have access to the best tools and resources to thrive in today's dynamic world. So that's us today. With that in mind, I am going to just right now pass things right over to Brenda to get things going with today's presentation. So for now, I will stop sharing and allow you to share yourself.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you all for coming, and thank you for having me. Digital Ed, I guess. All right. So the first thing I wanted to do was talk a little bit about Van-Griner. We are a custom publisher. Oops. A custom publisher, mostly of custom lab manuals. We do a lot of one-to-one titles. We do some one-to-many. We began as a custom publisher 15 years ago, mostly of print lab manuals. We do readers, textbooks as well, but the bulk of our work is lab manuals. But we, like I said, we also do some one-to-many. We had a tax series for a long time. We do some readers that are sold across universities. But the Van-Griner difference has always been service in all of those products. So instructors are able to write their own manual, use exactly their equipment, their lab spaces, their textbook references. And then we layer in our services of design, cohesiveness, proofing, administrative side of things, permissions, image sourcing, royalties, bookstores, all of that. And then the student gets a manual or a product that has only what they need. Their procedures don't need to be modified to account for difference of equipment, etc. So it works really well for the instructor and for the student. In 2019, we were introduced to digital ed. So back in 2019, when we started our relationship with digital ed, we were able to add more digital products to our offerings. We published our first online manuals in January of 2020. We all know what happened in 2020. And what started as a slow, take your time to figure this out approach kind of was thrown out the window. And we converted many of our print titles over the summer of 2020 so that students had a digital product come fall. It ended up working out for us though. So since then, we have been able to add a team of developers. We have nearly 20 times as many students enrolled now as we did when we started that first semester. We have added a relationship with BioDigital, which is a company that has anatomy software I'm going to show today that we can embed directly into Möbius. We have written some data analysis auto grading software that we embed into Möbius. And many other custom HTML question types, and also have a lab coordinator's dashboard. All of that being said, I just want to show you actually, I want to talk about our relationship with digital ed. Delivering our content in Möbius has allowed us to build on the level of service we can offer. So we're able to leverage all that Möbius has already been doing so that our team of developers is able to write tools to layer that all into Möbius to facilitate active learning in a variety of ways. So that's what I'm going to demonstrate now here with some of our actual content that we have, some demo content, some real content. But it's really allowed our service to expand to the TA and to the student as well. Because digitally, we can offer real-time feedback, automated grading, communication channels that free up time in the classroom for more intentional teaching and learning. So let's just go into Möbius. My first one is actually, I'm going to show you a PDF first. Our first one is an introduction exercise that was in a print manual. So this is at a large school in Ohio. We do about 10 for their chemistry classes, and there's 9 courses. And all 9 of those courses start with this cake chemistry lab. It's a fake lab. It's adapted from a lab on education.com. And they go through the normal lab process. There's materials required, a procedure, cautions, all that you would see in a normal lab that's going to show up later in your lab manual. And then, so they even have the blank pages, the blank data sheets, and then they show it all filled out, which I'm going to scroll ahead to where I'm a student has filled out her data pages. So I'm a student, she's filled out her, written out her procedure as if this were her lab notebook. She's added her data and observations, and the next step's a post lab. So at this university, we do most of the post labs digitally where the data analysis is graded in real time. So we were able to take this pretty static print example of a lab notebook and turn it into a dynamic activity that features a lot of the principles of active learning. So the students are just, I'm going to autofill for time's sake here, but the students are able to enter the data that Ima put in her lab notebook, and really it's relevant to the labs that they'll see later. And also it's cake, so it's familiar. So there's nothing distracting from that. You don't need to worry about the actual experiment. It's all about the process in the post lab. Ima made a mistake. She recorded to 3 decimal places instead of 4 decimal places. That's something that they will be deducted for later in their post labs. So we give them all of these experiences to mess up a little bit in this practice so that they know what's coming later. And we give them feedback then as well. Bring my Zoom toolbar out of the way. I'm going to fill out the rest of this. So as they enter all that data, we have practice with significant figures. If there's 3 sig figs, you need to have a decimal place. You can enter in scientific notation, all of that. And as they fill these pieces out, we've added a little status bar down here. They can always tell where they lost some points. They can always go back and review that feedback. It's going to show them where they made those mistakes. Once they enter all the data, they confirm that they've done so. And then we have other exercise thrown throughout, but all of that data is now auto-filled down here where the analysis begins. We have them enter the raw calculation first and then to sig figs. In this example, this is where Ima lost a point for the wrong decimal place. So her sig figs are only 3 this time. So we're able to take the student's data and grade against the student's data. So the data they enter, that's the sig figs we're grading to, etc. And then they work through the lab and get to experience a lot of things that they'll experience later in the lab. So here's graphing. They can hover, they can zoom, see their trend lines, see their data, and practice recording things that they would have to record in later labs. My next example is from the same school. Ooh, I got kicked out here. My next example is from the same school. So this is a lab manual where we do offer the print manual to students. They're all given a print manual, but then everything that's print is included in Möbius or in LabRite, and then exercises are layered throughout. So in the lab manual, spot checks, they can read, they can get feedback, so they can find out how they're doing as they progress through. We've added pre-lab questions in here, so the graded pre-lab is combined right into the lab manual. They can have feedback again as they go. Of course, all the question types, multiple choice, all of that. Significant figure questions again throughout here. And then I'll go into the post-lab for this one. Videos here too. So videos and different helpful tips and tools that the things you can't do in a print lab manual. The post-lab for this one. I even made sure I was logged in. Sorry about that. So in this one, this is another data sheet that's like the one that I just shared. Again, I'm going to autofill some data. And then I pre-filled some of the data down here so that you don't need to watch me fill in all of these cells. But this is an experiment where they run a solution 4 different times and they collect that data. So they'll have a CSV file because they're using data acquisition software. They can either type it in or they can upload a CSV. And it'll autofill all of that data in for them. Once that all fills, work their way through again. If they get something wrong, again, they'll get that immediate feedback. There's their data, here's their calculations. Let's see, our number here is 190. I answered with sig figs incorrect, so I'm losing points just depending. And all of this we set up custom to how the that particular department or instructor wants to deduct for sig figs, and or if they want them to round, all of that. Once they fill this all out, they have a graph with their own data. Since it was fake data, it's a pretty awful line, but when it's real data, they get to see a really nice trend line and answer questions. And they work their way through the assignment. My next example, which I was kicked out of this one too, is group work. So group work is something that we've been able to add into here as well. So a lot of times in labs, they work in a group and share data. Instead of the entire group having to enter that data independently, we have added a feature where one person enters the data and then they're able to share that code with their group mates, and everybody gets the same set of data. So that data is all in here. Everybody's using the same data. A lot of schools like to just share the data and not the analysis. Sometimes we'll share the analysis so they can all have the same grade and the same assignment. And it all goes to their individual grade books. This one is this is biology now. So biology at the university, or at a school, the University of Maryland, actually. We do another hybrid product where we sell a print manual and then all of their pre-labs are online. So they have all the reading and the pre-labs. I am sorry about this. Trying to be prepared. So they can answer all of their pre-labs online. The questions are again laid throughout. How did I do is on for these students again as well. All of the custom images for this school, custom illustrations and photographs, and intermixing of question types. And then another unique thing about this product is that on this homepage, there's always a second version of every assignment. So once they submit their graded assignment, we are able to use Möbius's policies to open up a version of the assignment that is for review only. It takes out the questions, but they still get all of that same content. I'm just going to pull from my list of links over here instead. My next biology assignment is another data analysis assignment. This one we do more group work. Well, actually we do class aggregation in this one. So as I fill in here, fill in all of this data, here's a graph. But the cool thing about this one is on the next page, we can see all of the class means come together here. So it's going to collect all of the class data. Students can work on that first part in lab. And then all of the class data is aggregated and shared with the entire section so that they can then perform analysis on the aggregated data. Again, more graphs, more data analysis. We have added some drawing features into Möbius. So we have a drawing tool here that we can color on. So students can color, change the size of their highlighter. They can use it to label. There's a typing feature in here. There's a pencil tool they can draw. We also like to let them have a template if somebody prefers to do this on paper, so they can download a coloring sheet, do all of their work with good old-fashioned pencil and paper, and then upload it to override this. So students have the choice of either using an iPad, a tablet, or a stylus, or just doing it by hand. This is one of the HTML, with Möbius's ability to add any HTML question, and this is something we were able to write. And then the next one I have, 74. This is an anatomy course. So we have an anatomy product that is ready for use. We have a lot of schools that are using this product. It was written for one school, but has been adopted by other schools. And this is where biodigital comes into play. So muscles of the head and neck, for example. There are 19 units that can be combined into any combination of labs. And here we have added videos, 3D models. So this is biodigital I was talking about earlier. With these models, students are able to rotate, isolate, reset back to the original. The labels can be customized depending on the instructor and how they're teaching. These labels can be, there are even videos and things that can be added to the labels. And then if I show you the exercises, we can also ask questions using these models. So I can select the wrong answer and find out that I'm wrong. And then these can be graded using an API. So we can use these as questions as an additional question type in Möbius. And they can do all the same things in here as well in the quiz versions. They can isolate, they can fade. And with biodigital, they have about 1,200 models to start with, but you can always build custom models. So we have a lot of instructors who like to create their own models using exactly the views that they want, and then students are able to manipulate those models. Here's another analysis activity. You can take your partner's blood pressure. I meant to put 120 in there. I'm going to autofill these. And again, we go to the next page and we aggregate class data again. So you can compare your pulse pressure data to your classmates or your mean arterial pressure data. Your data will be highlighted and your classmates' data is all showing up as well. And then we ask questions to reflect on that. That pretty much covers the content I wanted to show. I guess I'll give it back to Johnny.
Thank you, Brenda. I'm actually going to pass this down to Christina, who will share her screen to do the next portion of the webinar.
Thank you. I wanted to make sure I was not on mute when I said thank you, because I've done that a few times. So great. Thank you so much. And again, welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us. And every time I watch Brenda present any of the labs she's worked on with the team and what they produced in Möbius, it makes me think of all the small micro moments of learning that we can weave into these materials with our students. And by combining these in-class discussions, you'll have heard her refer to some of these moments where you're actually taking your partner's blood pressure measurements. When you're combining these together with online activities that these students can perform both synchronously and on their own time, we can layer different types of learning channels for students to engage with and reinforce some of these key concepts. So if you have not yet made the step to move some labs into a model where they're either all online or blended, it's something I really encourage you to explore, because the student outcomes are very meaningful, they're measurable, and the efficiency that's gained by your team to have the elements that Brenda demonstrated in a digital format, in a place that's online, that's in a centralized area, is enormous. And frankly, we're not the experts. Brenda and her team are the experts when it comes to what we do when it comes to labs. And Möbius is the vessel that LabRight is built upon. When you look at the expertise from Van-Griner and the team that Brenda works with, we're learning from them and taking their cues so we can improve the platform. So these are the types of things that we're very proud of. You saw some wonderful things that they built upon. So we're proud to be their partners and thrilled that, Brenda, thank you so much for joining us to show us all that work that you've done. Now, before I gush too much and get too ahead of myself, I'll go to the actual next slide. What I want to talk about is a bit about the characteristics of STEM programs and calling out what makes active learning so well suited to supporting student success. STEM in of itself is transdisciplinary. It pulls in and interlaces a wide variety of concepts and domains, and it encourages students to draw on their knowledge, on their skills, and on their different ways of working, and then apply them into the relevant and more meaningful contexts to solve these problems. So when we look at statistics and the studies that evaluate how students, or which students, what characteristics they have that succeed in this space, a large proportion of them actually exhibit strong self-directed learning skills. And that makes a lot of sense if you think about it, given the numerous rabbit holes that present themselves when we learn the bits and pieces of all these different concepts that interweave when it goes into STEM. And more so, the combinations of these specialized technology arms that extend into all these interdisciplinary programs, which continue to grow. They're sprouting up. The number of times I hear a new type of program that's out there. I remember, now I'm dating myself, but when mechatronics came out as a new discipline when I was at university, I was like, oh, it's mechanical engineering and electronics. That's super cool. We're seeing that everywhere. Every day, new universities are coming up with these, and it cements the point that there really isn't a mechanical, a physical, a chemical, a biology. They really are interdisciplinary, and that's happening more and more and more, and it's just increasing. So considering some of these characteristics, the statistics around the impact of active learning on the reduction of failure rates is quite telling. Fundamentally, when you look at active learning, these principles direct students down a path where they're trained to develop and employ their own toolkit of all the methods and strategies that they've learned, and it draws on a broad spectrum of knowledge and skills to meet these challenges that are presented towards them. Now, we have all faced the question of whether online delivery of STEM education is an effective approach, particularly in that COVID-fueled environment where essentially most people were forced to take what they were doing face to face and just turn it into a remote version of their synchronous models. As you can see from some of the statistics shared on the slide, at least within STEM discipline, it really isn't much of a debate now because we've evolved our understanding of how courses that have been designed to be delivered in this digital, high flex possible environment. And they offer an incredible opportunity to get closer to the needs of the students and meet them where they are in their learning journey. So the study that, the first percentage or the largest percentage point that you see on here, it's quite compelling. It is a study that found that students retain between 25 and 60% more information when they're learning online as compared to in person, which sounded very staggering when I first read it. So I had to dig in a little bit more. And luckily, our own team scrutinized us too. They're like, where did that number come from? Which is great. I love it. And I think it's the right way to do it. That's the curiosity in us. But when you think about it and dig into what they are saying, it is quite intuitive. These results aren't coming from the type of environment where the lift and shift of a strategy that was normally delivered in class is just delivered remotely. That is definitely not where those gains are coming from. They're coming from the courses that are designed to be blended, like what Brenda described in these environments where there's some in person, there's some remote, they're in high flex environments, or even completely asynchronous online experiences, but they're designed for it. The study emphasized how the gains in retention were all related to the opportunity to review and reread key points, personalize the pace at which concepts are consumed, exercise what you think you know, and retrieve what you just consumed in a way to say, okay, well, did I get it? Did I understand what it was? And it's in this low stakes environment where they can build up their confidence of the knowledge because it lets them control their progression. Oh, I didn't really get that. I got that question wrong. Let me quickly go back and read that paragraph. That's something that really does make sure that, okay, that's where retention comes in. It's all these components coming in. It's not just the existence of online. You all on this call know that, but a lot of these studies necessarily need to make sure it's clear that the ability to be online is not it alone. It's around the design of that environment. Now, we all know that's not the whole picture, because keeping the students' attention and getting them to go through all the material independently when they don't have a real-time lead in front of them to drive the progression, it demands more than just, click next here. And when you're done, click next here. You need to have interactivity and continuous engagement to get them through that. And that really is the crux of active learning, focusing the learner's attention, raising engagement, encouraging deliberate practice, all of which will ultimately increase learning and retention. And I do want to be very clear in what we're saying. Active learning isn't a new thing. I'm sure all of you know that. It exists because, it's not anything that exists because we're online now. It's always existed. And just referring back to, Brenda, what Brenda demonstrated with some of those labs, the lab itself is active learning. Those are some of my favorite and most impactful parts of schooling because you're pulling in all these great elements into one experience. You're learning some background, you're told some bits about what you're about to learn today and some theory and some concepts that you might need to learn. Maybe you're throwing an equation, Beer's law is thrown in there, a bunch of things that you're supposed to learn. And then you're acting out what you read in the way that's going to bring you to a conclusion that helps you reinforce that concept. And then the great part about working with a lab partner is that you get that immediate feedback if you're wrong in what you're doing. I immediately imagine these scenarios, and I'm sure it's happened to me before because I know I made this mistake when I was a student, that you're having an exchange with your lab partner and you're saying, oh, okay, I need to add 20 milliliters of this chemical in this beaker to initiate the reaction. Oh, okay, yeah, but I think you need to add a little bit more. No, it's at the 20 line. No, yeah, but remember the meniscus, you got to start there. It goes up. Oh, right, good point. You gotta go to the bottom of that little curve on that tube to make sure at the right point. Those little points that's active learning right there. Like that's exactly what it is in action. You have something engaging, you're going into a point, it's being reinforced, and you're putting it in action. That's how it gets cemented in someone's brain. I'll never forget it, and I haven't used, well, I guess I bake, so maybe I do use it now and then, but I haven't really used that principle in a really, really long time where it actually mattered. So what we're talking about here is how do we replicate and create an active learning environment in all the aspects of the student curriculum? Because labs are hard and expensive to do for everything, and sometimes they just simply aren't practical. And it's great to take advantage of the opportunities we can in person, and we should, because it does reinforce a lot of wonderful principles. But technology also allows you to create more of these types of moments in retrieving information, practicing what they think they learned, they meaning students, and getting that feedback immediately to know that, no, you might not be right with that, or yep, you got it, keep going. So for us, digital ed, we're big fans of the book Make It Stick. And that's what, you see the quote at the bottom of this slide. Peter C. Brown, it's an old book now. I'm sure there's multiple versions of it. But at one point it felt like it was required reading at digital ed. And you'll notice how closely aligned the science of successful learning is to active learning principles. Brenda talked about and demonstrated those labs in LabRight. It isn't a coincidence. We have professors that reach out to us and the team at Van-Griner because they believe so strongly in the effectiveness of these methods, particularly in maths and sciences and across all of STEM. So from a product perspective, we map the things we want the students and educators to be able to do to the actions that impact their success in learning. We summarize that journey with words like explore, engage, and excel. And the intent of those words are really just to align them with the capabilities that we surface in Möbius. They interlace, and exploration really doesn't exist without engagement. You can really excel with it, I get it. But the idea here is for us to help separating out what are the types of things that we can surface, and that makes what Brenda was able to show you possible. What can you build upon it? What type of engaging experience can you build for those students? So when we talk about exploration, we encourage students to master concepts at their own pace. And when in Möbius, we do that with guided lessons. We have interactive activities built within it. We add the ability to have multimedia content. Brenda mentioned biodigital. These are the types of partners that we think about when it's building out an overall experience that's engaging. The ecosystem in which technology exists, it's so vast, and we believe firmly at Digital Ed that we can pull in these third-party partners that are experts in their field in those domains, because it matters to have that relevance rather than being just a generic platform. And because we've been talking primarily about natural sciences today, I've added a few examples of the domain-specific elements that we've incorporated in Möbius. And the intent here is to provide more context to what it looks like to create an interactive environment that gets students amped up about their domain at their own pace. So these embedded components, like the new organic chemistry sketching component that we just released 2 weeks ago, that the types of product-related things that we're building out more and more and more as our roadmap evolves. And the intent here is to ensure we build an authentic learning experience for students. And really, exploration is tied to engagement. It's hard to pull them apart, but when you think about what pulls in a student's attention, it's that dynamicism that we provide, and also the recognition that physics isn't just physics, just like chemistry isn't just chemistry. I think that's the part that we really want to reinforce, and active learning relies on the ability to have that type of fluidity between domains. Our platform is built with that entire ecosystem in mind. So when you're educating students in these subjects, it really is an experience for them that's fluid, because they're never really just learning chemistry, biology, or physics. They're learning statics, they're learning dynamics, mechanics, heat, mass transfer. They're studying behaviors, elements of transformation from one state to another. All of these things involve the understanding of changes in time and space and behaviors. And we use that language of mathematics and statistics to capture those elements, which is, the underlying engine of where we build off of Möbius. But that's just a sampling. There's physical chemistry, there's biochemistry, there's fluid mechanics, research sampling methods. There's all these pieces that interlace all these different elements of STEM. And if you're looking at a piece of technology that only captures one part, you're missing the rest of the story. All of them beg for recognition. For example, that spreadsheets aren't just for accountants, just like a free body diagram isn't only compelling to a physicist. These types of pieces are important across the board. So going back to the engagement piece, I can go on this forever. Beyond the interactive exploration components, our assessments offer dozens of question types. And again, the algorithmic element gives you the infinite variations of them. So you can reinforce these complex topics to students and let them practice over and over and over again until they get it right, until they feel confident in the knowledge that they have. And practicing these concepts ensure true comprehension over memorization. And that goes back to that successful learning concept and active learning concept. The comprehension of a concept is far more powerful when you've actually exhibited it or when you've gone through and experienced it. And I promise this is my last slide, so you can actually have a conversation and some questions and learn more about what we're doing. The last part of this journey really is directed at the variety of assessment scenarios that we cater to. You can create engaging homework, practice tests, exams, and all of that with the full ability to customize the feedback that is presented, either doing it during or after completion. And that depends on, is it a high stakes exam? Do you want to give them feedback or not? Those are all options that you have. And another thing that people don't always know, and that's maybe our existing customers would have been with us too long, they don't always know what's new. We also accommodate paper-based assessments, and that is it's a choice that many schools have either decided that maybe their big final exam is in an exam hall and they're delivering it on paper. Well, that doesn't mean that you have to grade it all on paper and still have to go through that manual process without creating and using the tools that offer efficiencies. So we've introduced a grading technology as well that allows for collaborative grading of assessments that are administered online or in person. And maybe a shameless plug for our next webinar. We have a guest speaker that's going to join us from the University of Liverpool that's going to go through some of their delivery methods of online assessment. So that's at the end of August, so we have a little bit of time to plan for that. But they'll be talking a little bit more about these tailored assessment experiences, including time limits and feedback options and all the security measures that go along with it that really do allow you to have the experience you want to curate for your students that really gets them engaged in the class and basically amp up your ability to use active learning in your classroom. So with that, I try to get in those minutes, Johnny. I hope I did okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. You might as well just go to the next slide, Christina. So as mentioned, if you have any questions for either Christina or Brenda or myself, feel free to go into your Zoom toolbar, go to the Q&A button that you see, type in your question, and we'll respond to it live or directly to you within the chat window. We did have a few come through already. Brenda, you're on the hotspot right now. So the first question we have for you is, how long does it typically take a school, let's say Adopt LabRight, to get it up and running and use it with their students in terms of how much time does it take?
All right. So, well, right now we're working on one that I just started a couple weeks ago. We started the process and the conversation a few months ago, but nobody started putting the work in the content, the conception of all the content in until about this week, and we're going to run it in January. So, and we've done it faster than that. So just depending on where your content is already, and if you have that sort of prepared, we can pull it together pretty quickly. If it takes time to build that content out and you need some time to write, it can take a little bit longer, but usually a semester.
Okay. Perfect. One more question for you, Brenda, right now. When someone adopts LabRight, do they have pre-built resources available from the Möbius, like pre-built labs, for example?
Yeah. So we have databases for a lot of our topics. We have databases of both digital labs and print labs, but we can always take those print labs and make them digital and put them into Möbius as well. So we have lots of resources. We have image databases. We have scientific illustrators on staff for custom imagery. So yeah, lots of resources and content from us.
Okay, well, everyone, that is our questions for today's webinar. If you don't mind, Christina, next slide for me, so I can closing remarks here. Yeah, so thank you for joining us today. As I mentioned, you will be receiving an email from us later on today or tomorrow with a link to the recording. You can watch on demand and share with your colleagues. We'll leave this slide up for another minute, but if you want to contact Brenda directly, there is her email. For digital ed, just send it to marketing@digitaled.com. We'll filter to the right people here on our end to answer those calls. But again, I do want to thank Brenda for being our keynote speaker today. We really enjoyed learning about LabRight, and Christina, your notes on STEM and active learning were great as well. So with that in mind, I'm going to close off the webinar and thank everyone else who attended and participated. Hope everyone has a great day and rest of the week.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.